My first experience with death that I remember was when my grandmother died. I was 5 years old and I was absolutely scared to death.
I think if my parents had talked about it more, had talked about dreams and wishes for what they wanted out of their lives and what they wanted for their children, it would have made it easier.
In the Western world, and especially in the culture of the United States, we've really gotten away from being comfortable with dying and death.
In the Midwest, you're very stoic about death and there wasn't much crying, and to me it was almost a thing that happened outside of myself, and I never really had the chance to experience the emotions that I had.
Because of what I do and because of my faith with my kids is being able to help them not have those fears that I grew up with of death.
It's quieter here now on the phone wire. It's never your voice. We're all growing older without you. Your death made your daughters more beautiful.
The very first death that I experienced, I was also a birth coach for a very good friend of mine. And so I would literally go to a birthing class with my friend, and then I would go over to the hospital and sit with my friend who was dying.
Dying and death is part of the life cycle and needs to be included in order to understand the fullness and the richness of what life is all about. And so we go to great means to help orient or reorient families and the person who's actually going through the dying and death process to that fact, so that we can actually, as a group, as a whole, be so comfortable.
At times you are so noisy. I know death is not where you end.
I think there's definitely an analogy that can be made between birth and death. And when we talk about the presence of hospice and how we filter and how that all fits in looking at death as part of the circle of life. It's the closure of that circle.
My girlfriend called, she says, I'm in labor. And so I went up to the hospital, and that morning, less than 18 hours later, I was at a birth. And the birth was cesarean, and I was the one who got to be with this baby in the nursery for the first few hours of its life. And the energy was exactly the same. It was soft and loving and compassionate and warm, and I had the sense that one went naked, alone, but held in a sea of love, and the other one came in naked, alone, but held in a sea of love, and it was exactly the same. And it was an experience that seared my being as far as being afraid of death. It was an experience that it just went to my cells.
Before the 20th century, when people died at home, the bodies would be put in the living room parlor and on display for people to visit before they'd be buried.
But parlors actually were originally designed for a showing of the body when a person had died. And a lot of people don't even know that. And that was part of being comfortable and accepting and in a way celebrating a person's life and their transition on through dying and death, which we've gotten away from. And as a result, we've made people uncomfortable with that. We've also helped to dissociate children from understanding that, although it's really important to include them in the process.
When someone passes away or dies in the Philippines, we honor that person by having a celebration in the home for 7 days after a patient dies, that the body is actually in the home.
Flowers became customary to be with a funeral because it helped cover up the smells, and women would wear black for up to a year depending on who died in their family. And when Queen Victoria's husband Albert died, she went into deep mourning and wore perpetual mourning for over 25 years, and she really helped popularize mourning jewelry as a way to signify the fact that one was grieving.
I realized I didn't want to be my mother's chaplain, as I said, just to be the family member and have other people do that. And that's the case with nurses. We have all served patients in which the daughter was a nurse, and the nurse was happy to have us because you just have to be who you are when your parent is or your loved one is on hospice. And so I was happy to just be able to kind of relax my professional role and just be able to receive what they gave. And I feel like I was as thankful as our patients and family members typically are to us.
With modern medicine, it's all too easy to hide behind the technological advances, and you can't do everything all the time. And so the more you rely upon science to practice, you have to be careful because it's easy to forget the spiritual and emotional aspects of care that we provide, which really help complete a well-balanced and better approach to taking care of someone.
And Friday, we didn't think that she would live through the day, and then that night she woke up singing and sang to us for 3.5 hours. Now, my mother is deaf, or not deaf, but she's worn hearing aids all her life, and she's not a singer. None of us are singers. And that she would come awake and start singing was just a miracle. All of us kids, 8 children altogether, and her 2 sisters and some in-laws, we gathered in a room, and for 3.5 hours she sang to us and sang to her Lord. And on Saturday she was more clear and told us what she wanted to, who she wanted to be her pallbearers, what she wanted to wear, and there was no fear anymore. She let go so completely that there was no fear and no pain and no cancer, and everyone who came into the room was drawn into her arms and her eyes, and she was so unbelievably soft, and there was so much love and joy and laughter. She told her favorite dirty joke to her nephews who were in their early 20s.
When my grandmother was dying, she was 94, and my brother and I were standing at her bedside, one on each side of the bed, holding her hand, and she was in and out of consciousness, and she wasn't very lucid, and she said, "There's a train coming. There's a train coming, and I got to get on it." And my brother and I looked at each other, and we thought, it's time. And I said, "It's okay, Nan. You can get on the train." She said, "There's a train coming. I got to get on the train." And my brother and I are like, "It's okay, Nan. You can get on that train. Go. It's all right. Go. Get on the train." She says, "Okay, I'm getting on the train, but I'm taking one of you with me." And my brother and I looked at each other, and we're like, "No, you gotta go on the train alone. We'll catch up later."
For a nurse to be good, in my opinion, the first question I go into an interview, whenever I'm interviewing any staff member, is what's their heart like? Why are they looking at a job in hospice?
I think the type of person that is designed to work in hospice care is a person who has a lot of empathy and compassion, is a very caring spirit, and really has a level of commitment that goes above and beyond.
I've seen our team embrace families both spiritually, physically, emotionally, and care for the entire family. And I like to say that our team is a facilitator of peace through this journey.
My work in hospice has drawn forth compassion in me from depths that I didn't know was there.
I don't think it requires any special skills other than compassion and being the ability to be present and express love and support for people as they go through this transition.
Mostly it takes just a softness and a gentleness and a lovingness of spirit and an understanding that this is a natural process.
No one stands next to a coffin and says, "Oh geez, I wish I hadn't told them I loved them. I wish I hadn't told them that I forgave them," or "I wish I hadn't asked them to forgive me." No one stands there with that. They stand there wishing they'd said it.
And as we all get older, we're all exposed to more people in our lives and our communities who die. And we shouldn't be afraid to go and visit them. We shouldn't be afraid to just sit with them, whether they're conscious or not. And be present and say what you need to say to people. Because after they're gone, you're not going to get a chance.
If you stop and think about it and you're honest with yourself, if those questions are asked and answered before death occurs, you do see the destiny of a family changed. You do see that person different because it's not regret, but it's relief that they were real and they were honest and they loved.
I'm too busy being born to die. And anyway, death will come. It will be quiet and rigorous and ask something of me I had not thought to ask myself.